records differently than we treat long gun records, to the detriment of public safety throughout the state. Handgun records are retained, and those records are used as an important tool by law enforcement for many purposes I'll discuss in a second. By contrast, long gun records are purposely destroyed within 5 days. The purpose of this legislation is to treat long gun records the same as we treat handgun records and retain them so we can be assured that law enforcement has an important tool in trying to crack down on gun crime. Long guns comprise a third of the guns used in crimes. To give you a sense of what that means, in the years 2006 to 8, more than 26,000 long guns were entered in for tracing in California by ATF. 26,000 guns. This bill would create the uniformity that I described. Law enforcement throughout the state supports this bill.
Move the bill.
And it does so because it enables them to quickly identify the owners of crime guns, expose illegally trafficked weapons, disarm dangerous felons, return stolen firearms, and gives law enforcement the ability to be forewarned when they go to a scene that there may be a gun there. There are multiple arguments raised by opponents. None of them are legitimate. I will address those arguments in my close, but let me just say, among those arguments is the notion that this is an invasion of personal privacy. There's no more personal information required. They say this is unconstitutional. This does nothing to infringe anyone's ability to obtain a gun who is legally permitted to do so. I urge an aye vote.
All right, thank you. Two witnesses, 2 minutes each.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Will Mulder, Sergeant with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, appearing on behalf of the Sheriff. I'm strong support of this bill. For many of the points that some Mayor has so eloquently stated, it makes sense to keep this information. If somebody is either assaulted or killed with these types of guns, at least our investigators will have some sort of way of developing some evidence and catching the perpetrators. So you're right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Ken James, Chief of Police of the Emeryville Police Department. I urge your support of this bill. As the Assembly member so eloquently explained, this pure and simply is a common sense law enforcement bill. It gives us the tool to keep our officers safe and to solve crimes. As you heard, 26,000 rifles were involved in crime over the past several years. Those rifles there was no way for us to trace those rifles or use them for a lead in solving that crime. This bill would solve that problem. Additionally, it keeps our officers safe because now when we go to look for a prohibited armed individual, we miss a whole class of guns and rifles because there's no record to show that they are in ownership. This, as I said, pure and simple, is a common sense law enforcement. We urge your support.
Thank you, Chief, very, very much. Is Mr. Yih-Chau still around?
This is.
Any other witnesses in support, please? Name and affiliation.
My name is Amanda Wilcox. I'm here on behalf of the California chapters of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. We're co-sponsors of this bill, and many of our members have lost a loved one to gunfire. We urge your support. Thank you.
Good morning, Ben Van Houten on behalf of Legal Community Against Violence, also a co-sponsor of this bill. Urge your support.
Jim Lindbergh, Friends Committee on Legislation in California in support.
Any other witnesses in support? Support, please.
Mr. Chair, members, Alex Esparza on behalf of the City of Los Angeles in support.
Okay. Any witnesses in opposition? Please come to the table.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, again, we're with the National Rifle Association in strong opposition to the bill. What we're going to see here is, as of last year, there were 15 sheriffs who opposed this bill. I won't read the list, I read it to you last year. In my communication with the sheriffs so far, we're going to find even more sheriffs opposing this bill this year. So to say that law enforcement is supporting this bill is not accurate in any shape, matter, or form. The other thing you're going to find out is, in a case this year that we had called the Parker case, talk about ammunition registration. One of the things in the depositions about that, the Department of Justice came and testified to the accuracy and the validity of the gross records, the dealer records, sale records, which is what we're talking about here. What they found in auditing the gross records is the gross records are woefully out of date. What they're doing is that the way the current system is set up, and what this bill doesn't fix is that they record the transfer of the firearm to a specific person. What we're finding when we're looking through the gross records and trying to get an audit of the gross records themselves is you have firearms registered to multiple persons. It's not like a D&B record. So what you're finding is, here's something that's also happened in the dealer record sale records. A person goes into a firearm store to purchase a firearm. They pick the firearm out of the rack, the person at the store starts the transaction. The person decides to buy the firearm, they start the gross records, they start the gross process. What happens then is the firearm's put back on the shelf. A day or two later, because of the waiting period, another person may have come in to buy a similar firearm. And the salesperson inadvertently starts the gross again on the same firearm. So now the same firearm is registered to two different persons. So the problem we've had is the validity of the gross records currently have. The DROS system is an arcane system that's grown since the 1920s. It's never been updated. It's never been culled. It's never been audited. So, strong opposition, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Tom Patterson, representing the California Rifle Pistol Association. We're opposed to the bill. One of our concerns is although we appreciate the author's efforts, there's a disconnect because the reality of the situation is the majority of firearms used in crimes are stolen. This particular registration would put an undue burden on law-abiding citizens and makes it very difficult for individuals to move forward with less regulation. It's completely unnecessary. So for those reasons, we're opposed to the bill, and we ask you to vote.
Thank you, sir. Any further witnesses in opposition? Name and agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Gerald Cole, representing the California Association of Firearms Retailers. I've also been asked by Kathy Lynch, who's testifying in a different committee right now, to express the opposition of her clients, that being the National Shooting Sports Foundation, Crossroads of the West Gun Show, Safari Club International, Outdoor Sportsmen's Coalition of California, and the California Sportsmen's Lobby. Mr. Sam Paredes, Executive Director of Gun Owners California, is unable to be here today, and has also asked me to express the opposition to his organization. Thank you. From the standpoint of dealers, this is it's another make-work, increased cost bill.
You're going to have to jump in, sir.
Yes, sir.
We've had our two witnesses, so we just need you to weigh in, but I do appreciate your comments.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Name and affiliation, please.
Yes, Jason Ryan, California Idaho Heritage Alliance. We are also opposed to this measure.
Thank you.
Elaine Hellman, Total Responsible Citizens of California. We are in strong opposition to this bill.
All right. Any other witnesses in opposition? All right. Seeing none. Any questions or comments? Mr. Hackman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Fuhrer. Thank you for bringing this bill. I do have some concerns basically from, and I'd love to have some of these numbers maybe more explained to me. There's side 26,000 gun incidents over the last few years. How many were stolen versus not? My concern is the law-abiding gun owner who wants for a sport or hunting or whatever activity has to go through all these different hoops to get their firearm. But we're not focusing on my opinion, the real problem is the criminals who actually steal the guns, hide them, those type of things for officer safety. I'm also concerned, I guess the second thing is, my understanding correct, law enforcement won't be able to, they're looking for John Doe, be able to type in John Doe's name and see what firearms are in his possession before they knock on that door, with the presumption that they may or may not have a firearm, because they're registered. And I think in our law enforcement training, most of the time, when we come up and testify, we always assume that they have potentially a firearm because the real criminals are not going to register the guns in the first place. You have to go to that same heightened alert, and I'm afraid It may have some of the opposite effect of false sense of security if someone does not have a registered gun when they show up and knock on a domestic violence house or something. You always have to assume there's weapons present there. And the ability to have government be able to say, you have all these things in your possession, I want to see them now because I want to investigate, that's a privacy issue I have too. So I just want to think of just a couple of those things.
Yes, I appreciate the questions. First, does this pose an undue burden on legitimate gun owners? Here is the burden that it poses. When one goes to purchase a long gun, this bill, beyond additional requirements, would require that the purchaser provide the gun store the make, model, serial number, caliber, and type of the gun. It'll take 30 seconds. Currently, when one talks about undue burdens on gun sellers, currently, because we dispose of one form and retain the other, long guns versus handguns, there are two forms. Under my bill, there would be one form, easier, not harder to deal with. One form with basic information about the gun that would take you just a few seconds to describe. Additional cost? No additional cost. So then one says, well, what is the burden on the owner of a long gun? It's hard to figure what that additional burden is. It doesn't pertain to any current owners of rifles or shotguns. It pertains only to new purchasers. So then your question is, well, how does this really benefit law enforcement? So let's turn to our experts. Law enforcement leaders, chiefs of police, and sheriffs from Chula Vista to Chico support this bill. LA City and County, Fresno, Sacramento, Santa Ana, Stockton, I could go on and on. Those are our experts. And they're telling us, as the chief of Emeryville told us, that it would be helpful to law enforcement to have this bill. Again, why? Not because every gun that is used in crime is used by its original purchaser, but because every law enforcement leader will tell you that this provides a lead, at a minimum a lead, and at a maximum it tells them who has a shotgun like the scene of a domestic violence dispute. And yes, a law enforcement officer should always be wary when they go to the scene. Could always assume there might be a gun at that scene. But why do we want to withhold from them information that verifies that there's a weapon at that scene? And one other piece of information, law enforcement leaders support this bill because of the thousands of guns that are taken from prohibited purchasers, felons, people with mental disabilities, who currently have guns. But we don't know if they have long guns, we only know if they have handguns. Why is that useful? Why is that distinction useful for us? Only if there is a burden imposed on the long gun purchaser could that argument even be made. And if anybody here thinks that providing the make, model, serial number, caliber, and type of weapon, because that's all this bill requires, is an onerous burden, I'd like them to explain how.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, I'll take it as you're closed.
Indeed.
All right, the bill has been moved and seconded, and we can have a roll call, please. Welcome, Mr. Cedillo.
Amiano?
Aye.
Amiano, aye. Knight? Knight, no. Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Hagman? Hagman, not voting. Hill? Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell, aye. Imada, aye.
The bill is out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, colleagues.
All right, Mr. Portantino.